After a long weekend and a couple days to get back in the swing of things, I'm back after attending the Union Arena Los Angeles Regional. There were 251 players in attendance, and I was fortunate enough to place 8th, which got me a sweet looking prize card as well as secured my invite to the Union Arena Finals next year. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Damos, and today I wanted to go over my experience and matchups at the LA Regional this past weekend. As you probably already know, the top 32 deck lists were released and posted on Eggman's website, as well as shown in GG Haven's video, as they were some of the creators who helped with the event. You may have seen my list up there in the top 8, and I've seen a few videos from other creators that quickly talk about my list, but I wanted to speak more to the deck and explain some of my choices. Let's start out with the zero costs. The ones I played seem to be pretty standard outside of the first place list who played Yahiko, at least in top 8. There was one player who placed 13th that used Megami, but I opted for the standard Kaoru and 2 Kenshin. I thought about putting in additional zero costs, and there's definitely benefits to it. You can do what first place did and cut down on the Kaoru and add Yahiko, or have some variation to ensure you don't brick, as well as increase your mulligan capability to search for hands that actually matter. However, it's possible for it to backfire by you not drawing what you need. I valued the zero cost Kaoru at 4 to filter through my deck to potentially help me see my game winning cards if necessary, or just be another discard for my effects. The one thing I heard a lot of people mention is that Kaoru is not really great because you may want to keep your cards in hand and the cards you draw when you play her, but personally I think with this deck, as long as you understand what's necessary in the matchup, all your discards are easy, even if it's a special, raid, or even a final. Each matchup and situation is different, so I can't just say there's a priority discard over others, but for example, normally if you have 2 of the 3 cost Kaoru in hand, discarding the second copy is always the first choice. This is unless you're going up against Toto or another deck that can interact with your energy line. Against that deck, you'll want to prioritize keeping your double energy to make sure you can raid with minimal impact to your energy line for as long as possible. Now, the next thing I wanted to go over is the removal of the 2 Cost Kenshin. I saw a lot of deck lists playing this card within the top 16, including the first place list. Personally, when I was testing it, the card rarely came up because it wasn't a 4 of, as well as the fact that it's only good specifically in 3 situations, all of which are unlikely. The first is early game, being able to play it and to block a character because it will be a 4K on your opponent's turn. The second is when you use the action 2 Kenshin, which is also not normally played at the maximum copies allowed. And third, when you pair it with another card that most decks decided not to play, like the 2 cost Kaoru to boost its BP by 1K, or the 3 cost Saito to have more ways to remove its abilities. For this last scenario, I didn't want to make my deck revolve around this card being another 4K, and it also adds more ways to turn off the draw for the 3 cost Kaoru, which is one of the best parts of this deck. Overall, I didn't like the card and didn't miss it at all in the tournament. The deck plays plenty of Kenshins to raid on top of, and I valued other cards higher than this one. Next, I want to quickly talk about the 2 and 3 cost Kaoru. I've seen many discussions on the ratios for these cards. Some want to cut the 2 cost Kaoru and some want to cut the 3 cost Kaoru. For this specific list, I don't think you can cut either because the 2 cost is so incredibly valuable in the early game, so you want to see it immediately, and the 3 cost is so incredibly valuable the rest of the game, so again, you want to see it. If I was playing a different list, I would actually consider cutting the 2 cost Kaoru because I value that card less than the 3 cost, but because this list cut the 2 cost Kenshin, you just can't afford that. Now, everything after that seems pretty standard up to the action 2 Kenshin. I do want to take a moment to discuss him though. If you're playing 3 of this card, I think you need to play the 2 cost Kenshin. The effect will come up way more often to remove the abilities and will help you overall. And then you may even think about cutting the 3 cost and even potentially the 2 cost Kaoru down to 3, as you have less need to raid from the energy line since he plays himself out active and is only a 4 cost. What I mean by this is early game, if you've only seen one Kaoru, you're mainly depending on your smaller cards to provide energy, and if you raid a Kenshin from the energy line, you're removing that energy and need to replace it. With additional Action 2 Kenshins in the deck, you can just play them up front without the need to remove your energy line and force yourself to replace your energy line. Also, this card in certain situations is probably the best card in the deck, and that's simply because if you have it and your opponent doesn't expect it or really needs you not to have it, you can simply just win off of that. Sometimes your opponent will place their double energy generators in the front to free block and move them to the back, but if you have this Kenshin, they are either stuck up front or get sidelined and provide no help to the opponent and essentially waste their action points. This came up for me more than once during the regional where my opponent was trying to block because they needed an extra turn to get their board to where they wanted, and then I play this Kenshin, use the ability immediately to draw a card, hopefully into another Oath Not to Kill, and then maybe raid or play a special to remove a card from the front line and put them even further behind. Now, the last thing to discuss with my list is why 4 Hiten Mitsurugi-Ryu. It looks like most players played 2, and I believe that's what was popular in my local area as well. However, I found that testing in the mirror, having that extra draw power benefited so much, specifically so you could get to your raids and your Action 2 Kenshin first to just win you the game. The downside of this card is that it has no trigger, and that if you discard it off of Kaoru, you don't get the draw ability. There was another small reason I chose to play it at 4 that didn't come up in the regional, but in my mini games and testing, it did. When you're at the end of a game and you need bodies to push up to swing for lethal, this card allows you to push up your entire energy line, have 4 bodies to swing with, and you'll pay an AP to play a 0 cost. Then you'll pay your second AP to play another card to generate the second energy. Then you'll rest a character and win the game all in 3 actions. I believe a more common scenario might be that you potentially still have 3 characters on your front line or at least 3 attacks, and then you push up the 2 cost Kaoru for the 4th attack, and then just play the Hiten Mitsurugi-Ryu to rest a character to swing for game. Of course, these plays don't play around a final trigger, but if you're in that situation, it's probably win that turn or lose next turn anyways, so they better have it. Speaking of final triggers, I didn't run into any that I remember. I did have 2 situations where I had final triggers in my life, but it was after I had already won the game where I just checked my life, so my final triggers didn't ever activate. These were games where my opponents just went from top to bottom, which everyone did except my round 1 opponent. Which brings me to my matchups and record. I had 7 wins and 1 loss. I definitely feel I was lucky with my dice rolls as I won 6 of my 8 dice rolls. However, one of those dice roll wins, I did lose that game. So in the first round, I won versus Sukuna and Nanami. I did win the dice roll, and I think it was a decently easy game simply because he only saw 2 raids, a bounce Yuji and a 4-cost Sukuna. He mainly saw his double energy and small characters, so winning that wasn't too difficult. For round 2, I actually friendly fired against a friend in my local community who was playing Purple Saito. I won that game along with the dice roll. Unfortunately for him, my life was absolutely insane with 2 specials and a red color trigger resolving from the first 3 life, and he just had no chance catching back up. However, this game against him was something I was nervous about because I know he's a good player, and he proved that by dropping from the main event and then winning the regional side event, which essentially gave him top 8 prizing without the invite. It was just unlucky, but he turned that around and went undefeated in the side events, so props to him. My next round, I was a bit nervous as well. In round 3, I played against Purple Toto. I did win this one along with the dice roll. I was also fortunate enough to see my double energy early and see multiple copies, so by the time he swapped them up, it didn't do anything except give me a blocker to stop the damage too. Round 4 was my only loss. I played the mirror and I did win the dice roll, so everything was going as planned until the turn I got 3 action points. I remember this game vividly because I thought my hand was going to be really good. I went second like normal, and this was my hand. The 0 Cost Kenshin, the 1 Cost Kenshin, the 2 Cost Kaoru, 2 Hiten Mitsurugi, 3 Cost Kaoru, and the double attack Kenshin. I drew for turn into Ryutsui-sen. I play my 0 cost and my 1 cost. I add a 3 cost Kenshin to hand. I then discard the Hiten Mitsurugi-Ryu and draw into another copy. Next turn, I draw the Impact Kenshin for turn and play the 2 cost Kaoru along with the 3 cost Kenshin and discard a Hiten Mitsurugi-Ryu to switch him to active, drawing a 0 cost Kenshin and swinging at life. On my opponent's turn, he pushes for 2, swings at life, and hits a draw trigger. I then draw into another Hiten Mitsurugi-Ryu. At this point, I think I'm going to pop off when I see my Kenshins who can discard it because I've seen all 4. I draw for turn into another Ryutsui-sen, and then I end up playing the 3 cost Kaoru, discarding the additional Ryutsui-sen that I had in my hand to switch her to active. I then go ahead and raid the double attack Kenshin, which draws me into Oath Not to Kill. This allows me to then use that and switch the AP back to active and use the Ryutsui-sen in my hand to bottom deck a Kenshin on his front line, and then I raid the Impact Kenshin, moving the other copy to the energy line. Then I attack with double attack, discarding one of the Hiten Mitsurugis in my hand. I draw into a step Kenshin, and then of course I hit a special trigger. He sidelines my Impact Kenshin, and I go ahead and swing again with the double attack Kenshin, and he hits a second special trigger, sidelining my color trigger Kenshin. Next turn, he proceeds to swarm the field with a double attack Kenshin of his own and an Impact Kenshin to remove my Kenshin from the front line, so I now have no blockers. He swings for 3, and the first life is a 0 drop Kenshin, which has no trigger, then an Oath Not to Kill, which has no trigger, and then another 0 drop Kenshin, which has no trigger. At this point, I only had 3 life and not enough to come back that turn, as I needed my life to also at least have 1 special trigger in it. I play a few cards to keep myself in the game, but he proceeds to just overwhelm me as my life had only a get trigger left, and it's an unfortunate loss, but that's Union Arena. I really do believe I was winning this game if I didn't hit the 2 specials in life, and it does suck to have the 4th Hiten in hand in that exact scenario instead of a body or a card that could discard it. But realistically, the chances of that were incredibly slim, along with the double special in life and me having 4 non-triggers in my life. Even though it was a loss in round 4, I couldn't lose hope because obviously while I was trying to win the whole thing and still believed I could have if my luck wasn't so bad that game, I still was in it to compete for top 8 and top 16 for the invite to the finals. I played another purple Saito in round 5, and this was the first time I lost the dice roll. He made me go first, and I was still able to pull through with the win as I think I had the 2 cost Kaoru, which is great for going first. Round 6, I played the mirror, but my opponent made a huge misplay when he played his 1 cost Kenshin. He thought his hand was different and didn't grab another lower cost Kenshin. This just resulted in him falling way behind as he had to extra draw multiple times and didn't use AP for 2 turns. For round 7, I again played the mirror, and I lost the dice roll this time. I was made to go first and don't really remember too much of this match, but ended up coming out on top. And for my last round, I played against the 15th place player Ryza, who had just a few weeks prior won Bandai Fest Dallas. He was on the same deck and even the same list, come to find out when the lists were released. For this game, I could tell he knew what he was doing, but I could tell also that his hand wasn't great because of how he was playing. He had a lot of energy, but was playing out low cost characters and double energy generators on the front line. There was one play I made in the game that I do remember clearly because everything happened exactly how I planned. It was early in the game and he had 5 energy with 6 life left. He also had a Suzaku and Cornelia on the front line. I was trying to be aggressive and had to make the decision to get rid of the Cornelia or the Suzaku. I chose the Cornelia as it would force him to have another if he wanted to get off her search effect to play a card for free like Suzaku or Nunnally. I was banking on the fact that he didn't have many Suzakus and I wanted him to raid over his current one with the 6 cost raid since he didn't yet have 8 energy. I ended up getting 2 damage in and then he blocked 1 attack with the Suzaku to move it back to the energy line, giving him now 7 energy. He then proceeded to do exactly what I wanted on his next turn by raiding the 6 cost Lancelot and played a few characters up front as blockers. I let the damage 2 go through to potentially gain a bit of advantage if I hit a trigger, and from there I pushed back his Lancelot to get rid of the blocker and disrupt his energy line if he blocks my next attacks. From here I was able to get in another 2 damage before he disrupted his energy line and pushed back the Cecile. On his next turn, he then moved up the Lancelot. He then ended up having to use 2 action to raid a Cornelia, just like I wanted earlier, which got him to be able to play an Anya, and then he ended up playing a Liv to give him back an AP, which just allowed him to play another Cornelia raid and 6 cost Lancelot as vanillas. Now, I did have too much advantage at this point as I just pushed back his Lancelot again and won from there with double impact. If he had been able to bring out an air cavalry, he might have had a chance, but the only Suzaku he ended up playing was the one that was still underneath the 6 cost Lancelot. After winning that game, I secured my spot in top 16, but wasn't sure where I'd place beyond that. Unfortunately, compared to everyone else in the top 8, my tiebreakers were the worst because of early drops. So I wasn't able to get the top 4 for the playmat, but honestly, top 8 is where the real prize is. I was able to select a prize card from the 14 cards available. Most of the top 8 chose to grab the Nikkei card, but I ended up going with the Lelouch because I knew I wouldn't want to sell it. I figured it would be a nice trophy to keep, and some of the other top 8 players wanted to see what it looked like because they all chose the same card. One of them even said, "Oh, he's in it for the love of the game." And that's true. I love this game. I love the community and hope this game grows exponentially and expands to more people. That's one of the reasons why I created this channel, to helpfully help grow the player base. With that being said, let me know if you have any questions I didn't go over already in this video. I do have a few more videos planned, but these can sometimes take a bit to prepare and edit for you guys, so I appreciate your patience. Please make sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more Union Arena content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.